Will Kako give you any tips and tricks for the job?
I'm not your mother. Just do what I pay you for. It's easy work. Yeah.
Let's do this.
Cyberpunk 2077. We've waited longer than we expected to for it, but it is, I promise you, very much finally here at last. And I've been playing around with it. This is the console version, the version of the game no regular reviewers were allowed access to before launch, which felt like something of a big flashing red warning light. Never does feel comfortable when something like that happens. It's not the first time something like it has happened, and it's not always a red alert sign. Sometimes there's just practical concerns of one thing or another. But hello again, I am Blunty. Like, subscribe, comment, etc. Thanks very much if you do. In my last video, I looked at some leaked NVIDIA performance charts that suggested running this game at maximum settings on PC with ray tracing was going to brutalize even the most powerful, most expensive, and as of right now at least, basically unobtainable GPUs. It also gave us some fairly strong hints you will absolutely be better off with a Team Green GPU, as DLSS seems to be the only way to keep pretty stuff turned on all the way up and see playable frame rates, especially at 1440p and 4K. And sadly, AMD's DLSS equivalent is just not here yet. They're still working on it. They promise. It'll be ready sometime. Soon-ish. Kind of. Maybe. Uh-oh. But in this video, you're looking at the game on console, as hopefully I've made clear in the title so you're not confused already. Specifically, if the on-screen button prompts haven't given you the clue, and again, depending on how I title this video, it's Xbox. Right now, you're looking at Xbox Series X gameplay, output and recorded at 4K, and as is commonly the case with new-gen consoles already, there are two different graphics modes, one called Performance and one called Quality. The performance mode is the default option here, and it does its best to nail the game to 60 FPS. Now, I don't have the nifty tools set up that the likes of Digital Foundry do to properly and exactingly measure console frame rates and frame pacing with handy-dandy on-screen charts and graphs and whatnot, but I can tell you by how it feels to play, and indeed I can somewhat show you by slowing down the gameplay, it is not a stable 60 FPS. It's not locked to 60, unfortunately. Hopefully with a few more patches we'll get there, but right now, not so much. There is some stutter and some jitter, but the good news is it's relatively minor in my early experiences so far. If you look for it, you'll find it, but unless you're especially sensitive to it, you'll probably not notice it outside of the worst cases of it. In any case, much of the worst of it is kind of masked by the very aggressive motion blur, which you can turn off, by the way, but if you do turn it off, yeah, you're gonna notice. I really don't like motion blur, but this is why it tends to be on by default, because it helps mask issues with frame pacing somewhat. Still makes me feel a bit queasy either way, though. The other mode, Quality, snaps down to 30 FPS targets, which seems a bit more stable, as you'd hope, and ups the detail of the render just a bit, although not as much as you may expect. Even on the Xbox Series X, the game's dynamic resolution scaling leaves a lot of parts of the game looking decidedly mushy, especially outside on the streets. But also, let me be very clear here, as it stands, at launch, if you play on a Series X, you are playing it in backwards compatibility mode. You're running the Xbox One/One X version of the game. And PlayStation users, for the record, are in the exact same boat. The PS5, if you can manage to get one, will also be running the last generation version of the game for now. But do know there is a next-gen patch coming, which, amongst other things, does nice things to reflections and whatnot. But right now we have no solid timeline for that. The best we have is sometime in 2021. As you might guess, the Xbox One X version doesn't get a mode choice. It just is what it is, and what it is rather predictably a 30 FPS target. Here it is side by side with the performance mode on the Series X. But while you take a peek at that, in more general terms, the game feels reasonably good on console actually. The field of view isn't too tight, as sadly it very often is on FPS games for consoles, and the control layout is pretty sensible. All that said, you bet you're a bum that I'll be spending the lion's share of my playtime on PC, where a mouse and keyboard make for a much higher fidelity of control for a first-person game, especially one that has shooting mechanics. Some people can play FPSs just fine with twin sticks. I'm not one of those people, as you might be able to tell if you take a closer look at some of my aim going on here. But first impressions on a console are reasonable, and I look forward to the next-gen patch so it can at least look a lot crisper, run a bit smoother, and have some extra razzmatazz and enhanced reflections and such. The environments feel great. The sound design is wonderful. The characters feel like they've had some great attention and craft put in already. I've only met a few people, but they all seem very distinct and very well done, and the voice acting's nice and everything. I like the dialogue options. I like the general attitude of my character V. And although I am less than 2 hours deep in the game, and a fistful of that was just mucking about recording stuff for this very video to give you guys an idea of what's going on, I did get a very pleasant first impression from it. It certainly feels like an RPG system I can fall into and get lost in, all while defiantly ignoring the main questline to indulge in the world building itself and just sort of soak into the world.
Your return to NC has been good? Busy already?
I'll pick up something here and there. Nothing major. But I'm getting by. Appreciate the concern.
So, Atlanta didn't turn out like you expected, huh?
As you can see, I'm back. If it had been better there, wouldn't have left.
Maybe it'll all work out for the best.
Much like Fallout 4 back in the day, actually. I say back in the day, it wasn't that long ago, was it? A very, very different game, of course, but I got a similar vibe, a similar feel from it and first impression. Because I was like 70 hours into Fallout 4 before I even bothered chasing down the final act of the core storyline. I was perfectly happy just getting lost in the world and doing side quests and adventuring and exploring and all that sort of stuff, and I get the feeling that it'll be much the same deal here in this game. Hopefully, anyway, because that's definitely what I want from it. But anyway, I do hope this has been interesting, informative, useful to you. If so, you know where to find the comment section and the thumbs and the subscribe and the bell and all that sort of stuff. And thank you as always to the patrons whose support goes above and beyond and is very much appreciated. I am Blunty. I will hopefully catch you next time if the algorithm is kind. Thank you very much for watching.